is absolutely wild as Vern Gagne's all-star wrestling goes coast to coast and continent to continent. The greatest wrestlers in the world.
He may be an apprentice carpenter, but I guarantee you he is a seasoned ring veteran.
I've been hit with bar stools, bar rags, barmaids.
I'm talking to you.
They're scared that Hulkamania's still running wild. Oh, yeah. I got a big fat wife and 9 kids at home, and I gotta feed them.
And take a look at Jesse the Body in real life.
Open your hand once if you would.
You want the stick?
This is absolutely unbelievable. Totally, completely out of control.
He's coming in over the top. Hey! Look out!
What's going on, everybody? Welcome in to AWA Unleashed. We are preeminent. We are number one. Well, we are the number one AWA podcast because we're the only AWA podcast. But you know what? Facts don't matter. Or do they matter? You know what? It doesn't matter to Mick, and it doesn't matter to the man who I found out today, he's got Ethernet money.
Ah, shit. Hey, the fiber is less than I spent through my cable provider. So I'm cutting the cord today.
Yeah, fiber. You got the Raisin brand of internet, so good job.
Well, yeah, I am 60, so I need all the fiber I can get nowadays.
I'm a man. I'm 60.
At some point, we'll do a podcast today.
Oh, are we on the air?
Yes.
Yeah,
Oh.
Hold on. Let me adjust my. There we go.
There we are.
Production meeting on the air. Okay. Okay. Ready? I'm going to start the recording here, guys. I'm going to take you out. Ready?
Okay, in 3,
3,
2, 1, go.
Much better.
Much better.
Well, it would increase the ratings if you took me off more, but, you know.
We go from 1 to 2.
That's right.
Hey, Mick, show us your coffee cup today.
Here's the today's coffee cup. There it is, right there. See now,
Yeah, that one's better.
Yeah, it is. And then if you turn it around, there's the ever-present shadow of.
Whoa.
Yeah. And you pointed out something about his belt.
It looks like he ain't wearing no pants, no drawers, no tights. It looks like it's an Adam and Eve sort of thing, where it's just that's Adam with the leaf covering up the,
That's not a leaf. That's a freaking palm tree.
And you're seeing what you want to see, and you're imagining Nick without any trunks on, Chris.
Oh God!
What do you think?
Oh no!
Hey, not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying.
I don't know.
Should we roll with the podcast?
44 years I was friends with the guy, and never once did I even think to myself along those lines. Never.
That
You're
makes
welcome.
2 of us.
I don't know what took you guys so long. What can I say except you're welcome?
You know, some people think outside the box. Chris thinks about the box.
No, that's not a box. Someday
have you not seen the Saturday Night Live skit?
I don't know why I did any prep for this show, because
That's
clearly
true.
nobody's watching anymore.
Hey, Joe, step 1, cut a hole in a box.
Exactly.
Never mind. Google it. Kids.
Wrestling.
Snorkeling? What'd you say, snorkeling?
No, let's do wrestling.
Oh, okay. Because I'm like, what? We went from dick in a box to snorkeling. That's quite the stretch. Okay.
I'm going back to bed.
All right. This is what happens when I have a late night and I get up early to do a podcast the next morning, because as we're recording this, Mick is getting ready to go to Vegas. Joe's got his stuff, and I had a very late night with Major League Baseball last night. So for those that don't like the BS, we will timestamp it and we will let you know to get to the 5-minute mark. But for those, welcome in. We do appreciate it. We've got a fun show today.
Yeah.
Do have a little bit of shilling we need to do. First of all, our Pinfall membership, you guys, people have loved it, and we loved you guys being part of it. It's an extra little, $4.99 a month that we. It's something that we provide. You get access to this podcast a day early. You get our exclusive monthly watch along with updated commentary. Mystery Science Theater 3000 meets wrestling, and got to be honest, everybody that has seen it, it's just gone over like gangbusters. You get our Back to Ringside with myself and Mick, which is a weekly show that we do that revolves around the current stuff in the business. You get a thank you letter with an Unleashed sticker and a magnet from me. You get 5 photos from the Slick Mix picks. And by the way, guys, if you are a Pinfall member and you have not received anything, because I know I'm working a few weeks behind here. Email me, chris.sportscaster@gmail.com, or DM me. Let me know, because I'm working about a month behind because of my shoot job. So we got that, and we've also got our TeePublic, which is where you can get this. You can get your Unleashed merchandise. I don't think you can get a Nick Cockwinkle cup, but I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Anything else before we get into the topic today, guys?
Yes. I want to thank Ron Hutchison.
Yes.
Not only was that an outstanding podcast, but my God, did he put us over. I don't know that we've had anybody that was so excited to be on a show where he took to the internet and basically put us over, put the podcast over. Loved having Ron on the show, and I'm honored that he chose us, because he doesn't like to do podcasts.
Yeah, he doesn't do these.
No, and the response to the show he was on has been tremendous. So Thank you, Hutch. We'll see you in Vegas.
I second those comments. I'm just wondering, because he was so nice, if him and Bobby Bass didn't have a few drinks before the podcast, and then probably after, and then for dinner, maybe in the evening, into the morning. Anyway, I digress. Let's do wrestling again.
Yeah,
Yes.
that'll be next year in Waterloo, and we've got people that I know are going to Waterloo for the first time, and they are excited because Ron is going to be there. So I'm super excited. Hopefully, it'll work into my schedule next year. All right, let's get into it, guys. The topic. This is an interesting one because we hear about it all the time. The best wrestlers to never be awarded. I said win, but do we rephrase that to say never be awarded the AWA World title, because we know that it's not won, but you are chosen based on a myriad of factors?
I think that's pretty fair, Chris. And I've, to the guys who've always said, hey, I won the champion. No, you didn't. No, you didn't win it 17 times or whatever. You were awarded. You were chosen. You were handpicked to carry it for a while, to carry the company. But it's interesting because, you call the show the best never to hold, but that's a little bit deceiving, because basically we asked people. I did a poll on the Slick page and the Unleashed page, basically saying, who do you think would have been good choices, 5 good choices for the AWA Heavyweight Championship, people that had never won it before? We asked for 5. We're giving you 10 today plus ours, so you're going to get 13 different opinions, but that's all they are. It's opinions. It's not official. It's totally subjective, and it's interesting. There was some pretty consistent vote getters across the board. Couple of surprises, but we'll go through those. And for those who don't know, when you sent me the 5 names, I gave them points on a reverse point system. If they were number 1 on your list, they got 5 points. If they were number 2, they got 4, and so forth. So very interesting.
One of the quandaries when you first reached out to get a list was, to never win or awarded an AWA title. Does the tag team championship count?
No.
Okay, but that is an AWA World title.
Yeah. I think in the poll, I think I said AWA Singles Championship.
Okay.
I did not have anybody that said, is this tag team? There's a couple of guys that tied vote for vote that just happened to be a tag team, and we'll get to that too. But yeah, we're talking strictly AWA Singles Championship, and we had good response.
Yeah. All right, let's get to it here, guys.
Reverse order.
Reverse order. Okay. So I am going to bring up the first one, Mick, if you want to go ahead and start introducing this individual.
Yeah, let's get this man up there because, boy, time and place. I tell you what, when superstar Billy Graham came into the AWA territory in the early 1970s, we hadn't seen anything like this guy. I mean, he put Gorgeous George to shame. And I think having superstar Graham on the list, although he was the 10th place vote getter, makes all the sense in the world because he had incredible heat in a time when a heel was a heel, and he was over the top.
I had superstar Billy Graham much, much higher on my list. To me, a man before his time. His wrestling skills were, shall we say, adequate, Mick, and nothing over the top. But his size, his charisma, his mic skills, I think would have really made him a great chase for that AWA Heavyweight Championship.
Yeah, I completely agree with Joe on this. I think that we've seen over the course of time that you don't need to be the best technical wrestler. If it's about talking people into the arena at that point in time, based on everything that I've heard and that I've seen, because that was ahead of my time, obviously, but you look at the response that he got, it would have been, I think Vern would have been completely justified in having him being a villain because he seemed like one of those guys that fans would want to see get his comeuppance.
It's interesting, too, because he came in at a time when Vern had an iron grip on that championship. Vern did not lose the title until 1975. So, Superstar Graham's appearance here was before that, and clearly Vern had no intention of dropping the title for a while, which may be why Superstar was neglected. But I'll tell you what, I was in the studio when he made his debut here. Oh, my God, the response. This guy just lit up the Calhoun Beach Hotel ring area, and it was a phenom. And I'm glad he made the top 10.
Yeah. What do we got next?
Who is coming in at number 9? Mr. Tubbs. Get him up there. There you go. Now, this was interesting. He garnered even more votes if you put the two personas together. Sergeant Slaughter, our buddy Bob Remus. Of course, as Super Destroyer Mark II, he got a couple of votes. People thought that he would have been a good guy to at least give a temporary run with the championship. But as Sergeant Slaughter, when he came in, arguably towards the dying days of the AWA, there's still a lot of people that thought that the AWA probably would have been well within their rights to put the championship on Sarge.
Tough to disagree with it. I mean, look at the success that he had even when he went back to the WWF. Of course, had to turn heel in order to really get over in that regard. I didn't have Slaughter on my list, but I get it. I would agree with him being in the top 10.
Oh, and I think anytime you have that was still in the era of evil foreigners versus American heroes. So, I mean, because I think obviously the Iraqi sympathizer in WWF, like that changed everything for Slaughter. But I think at that point, we hadn't gotten there. So he was still, he was G.I. Joe. So, it was that crossover because he had his own action figure under a different gimmick.
Yeah, and you got to remember too, the AWA needed name stars back then. You know, when you were getting into that Pro Wrestling USA era, they needed marquee names, and because they were losing a lot of talent. And Sarge was one of those marquee names. You know, he had that silly America's Heavyweight Championship that he and Zbyszko traded back and forth a few times, but tremendously popular. And and Joe, you know what a super guy he is outside the ring. But number 9, the Sarge.
Yeah.
According to your votes, folks, these are your votes. Okay, let's take a look at Crazy 8. We got a tie. We have a vote for vote tie. And Joe, you and I were talking about this before we went on the air. Again, we're talking about the singles championship in the AWA. Greg and Jim got an equal amount of votes. From my perspective, I would say I would rather have had Jim Brunzell have a run with the championship as a heel, maybe managed by Bobby Heenan. I think that would have been acceptable to me. I think as a singles champion, babyface champion, maybe not so much, especially when he had all those years of history as one of the high flyers.
Under the scenario that you just laid out, Mick, first of all, let me start with Greg. I'll give Vern credit for not playing into the nepotism and putting it on Greg. Greg is a dear friend of mine. I talk to him often, but he was just too small to be a world heavyweight champion. Definitely had the ring skills without question. His mic skills were all right as a babyface, but back then they were all pretty vanilla promos from a babyface. But I'm intrigued about the Brunzell turning heel and maybe having Adnan as his manager or somebody as his manager. Like Greg, fantastic ring skills, had a good look. But Jim's babyface promos were just not, again, they were pretty vanilla. I would have loved to have seen Jim be a heel. And if he would have done the American to Iraqi turn and going against Greg, picture this, tag team match, high flyers don't win, Jim turns on Greg, Adnan comes out. Can you imagine the heat that would have been generated from that? Ooh.
There's another option. Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, I was just going to say, at that point, do you think, Vern, because he, was all about the legitimacy of wrestling, do you think that he understood that Greg wouldn't be looked at as a serious champion? Or, because we know that Vern, from my understanding, only put the belt on people that he could trust. You should be able to trust your own son, right?
He first of all, he gave him the tag team championship. I think he had enough foresight to know that Greg as a singles champion wasn't going to go over.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on in the late 80s, he gave him that international TV championship. So he gave him a little taste of the gold, but not to single Greg out as the greatest wrestler in the world. Kudos to Vern. To Joe's point about Adnan managing Jim Brunzell, I never thought in terms of Adnan, but I thought in terms of Bobby Heenan. Managing Brunzy, and then Brunzy would not have to do a lot of talking. No question about that. Bobby would be his mouthpiece.
And Brunzy was open to, we talked to him about it before, and he seemed like he was more than open to it.
Yeah, and of the two, Greg was not going to turn heel. I know we've talked about this before, and Joe has made the point. There's no way that Greg Gagne was going to turn heel in the AWA.
Nope.
So thanks for the votes, and it literally was a vote for vote tie.
I guess you can't have one high flyer higher than the other, I guess.
There we go.
Both even.
Are we at number 7?
Yes, we are.
I don't do math. There we go.
Number 7. Okay, here we go. And this is another one we talked about, guys, before we went on the air. No question about it. This guy is an AWA legend and an AWA Hall of Fame guy, and it's Larry the Axe Hennig. Larry, as a heel, was tag team champion with Harley Race. And he was as a babyface even before that with a guy named Duke Hoffman. Larry was a tag team champion when he first got into the business. I think, and Larry got a lot of votes. Let me say that. He was pretty consistently on everybody's list because he had been such a mainstay in the AWA. My take is that I saw Larry more as a tag team guy over the years. He had singles runs, yes, but whether it was Duke Hoffman, Harley Race, Lars Anderson, Kurt Hennig later on. Larry was a tag team guy, and I don't know that Larry would have wanted the schedule of an AWA World Heavyweight Champion, but he got a lot of votes.
You bring up some good points there, Mick, and it's one of the things that I don't want to say struggled, but thought about as I was compiling my list is, what era? As a babyface or as a heel? Which version of the wrestler? Larry was, as you mentioned, a tag team wrestler. He was also a heel and a babyface. So which of those versions, and I'll include the tag team as a third version, even though he was a heel when he was a tag team, which version of that would I have liked to have seen the wrestler get the AWA World Championship? In Larry's case, I would not have wanted to see the heel or the babyface Larry Hennig with the title. The heel version, I would have loved to have seen. So, and this really applies to the entire list, and especially the 5 that I chose. Which era? And when I go through my list, I'll denote the era that I think they would have made a good champion.
Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, no, I was just going to ask, because there was so much personal animosity between Vern and Larry, was that one of the reasons why Larry just always got passed over? I mean, he did get he was a tag. I mean, when I think of Larry and Harley more so than anything else. But do you think that personal animosity was one of the reasons why he didn't ever get that opportunity?
Interesting thought. And I don't know firsthand knowledge, but I would venture to say Larry was just fine with holding a tag team championship and being in tag teams where, his participation is somewhat limited. Mm-hmm. Larry had a history of knee injuries. And Larry was one of those guys. He could have gone elsewhere, but he didn't. He wanted to stay here. So he was kind of a homebody. To Joe's point about Larry the heel versus Larry the babyface as a champion, I would say absolutely I would go with Larry as a heel because he could talk. He could cut a promo with the best of them. I think, he turned babyface in 1974 and he got involved in a lot of main event feuds, but a couple of championship matches here and there. As you get farther on, the babyface Larry Hennig is an older Larry Hennig. He's teaming up with his son. He's not in the shape that he used to be. So I think from the mid 80s on, there was no way Larry was going to get the singles championship. But a tremendous talent.
Yeah, and the other thing to your point, Chris, is it wasn't only Larry. It was any AWA wrestler from for about a 14-year run. It was either Vern Gagne or Nick Bockwinkel.
Yes. Yeah.
So how many other, in fact, pretty much every wrestler on the list, I think, could be added to your point, Chris, of they just didn't get the shot. Whether it was animosity, whether it was just that Vern didn't want to do a lot of title changes, but literally every wrestler on the roster during that 14-year run, they had their shots at the main event, shots at winning the championship. But the reality is there was not 4, there was only 2 over, 13, 14, 15-year period.
And it's almost unheard of today that we would have something like that. Because it's like, because people get bored with that now. Did fans ever get bored knowing that, okay, well, yeah, Vern's going to retain or Nick's going to retain the, okay.
Maybe later on, Chris, maybe as you got into the 1980s, but certainly in the 60s and the 70s, different era where a babyface was a babyface, and they loved Vern Gagne here. One thing I would say, and this is kind of, off the mark a little bit, but Buddy Rose used to tell me that when he was coming into the AWA territory, he was basically told, you're not going to get pushed over the high flyers, and this is when he started out in the business. So again, to some extent, Vern was protective, but I also think it's a different era, and it played out all right back then for him, a guy having the title for a long time.
Yep.
I suppose it made the title changes mean more then.
Absolutely. Yep.
Oh, look at Bruno's run with the WWF.
Yep.
How many years was that run?
I think it was 8 years.
Yeah.
That Bruno
didn't Backlund also have a long run in WWF too, or am I just?
No, he did, but not nearly what Bruno did.
Gotcha. Yeah. I know Bruno's was extremely long.
All right. Is this number 6?
Yes.
Interesting choice, but again, he was really consistent on the roster. And I would like to look at the demographic of the people that voted. Are they voting for the Wahoo McDaniel of the 1970s who was feuding with superstar Billy Graham, or are they fans who remember Wahoo from the late 80s when he's feuding with guys like Adrian Adonis and and that type? Wahoo, consummate professional. I don't know if Wahoo would have wanted the grueling road trips and etc. of an AWA champion. I think he would have been tremendously over as a babyface. Wahoo was always real popular here in the AWA area, but I don't know. I got mixed feelings about that one, but nonetheless, he got a lot of votes.
I never factored in whether the talent would have wanted the schedule or whatever. When I submitted mine and when I thought about this, it was just, who do I think would have been a good champion?
Right.
Having said that, Wahoo was definitely over as a babyface. His interviews, they were decent, especially the younger version, and along those lines. The 80s version of Wahoo from, when he came back to the AWA, no, Wahoo was past his prime.
He phoned it in.
Yeah, he should not have gotten the world championship. The early 70s version of Wahoo, I think that would have been a fun run.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And I never saw prime Wahoo McDaniel. I saw him, like you mentioned, the late 80s. I never saw the stuff with Superstar. I saw the stuff later on. And I mean, I knew Wahoo was a big deal, but at that point, he was just kind of a guy that I knew had been around for a long time. There wasn't anything special about him outside of the name, if that makes any sense. And I don't mean that in a degrading way, but it was just at that point in time, it was kind of like passé.
Chris, when you started watching wrestling is the time that Joe was alluding to, where Wahoo was just kind of phoning it in. He was, again, a major name. He had been in the AWA before, but nowhere near the Wahoo McDaniel of the Superstar Graham era, not even close.
No, when Wahoo came back, he was in his early to mid 50s.
And he was an office guy, really, when he came back too. So.
Yeah. At the time, it felt like Wahoo was added to the card because they needed a name, and the roster was diminishing. Everything was diminishing.
Same thing with Slaughter. I think Wahoo was another one of those guys, just like Sarge. We need a name.
Yep.
All right, number 5. We're cracking the top 5. This one is interesting, and This obviously is strictly the heel Ken Patera, excuse me, that people were voting on. Because Ken broke into the business, I believe, 1972 or 73, and he was nowhere near what you see in that picture. He was about a 350-pound weightlifter. He was kind of a milquetoast babyface doing strictly the strongman stuff. I've said on this podcast before, Ken Patera as a heel, to me, one of the most underrated heels ever in wrestling. What you saw was what you got with Ken Patera when he was a heel. And I think this is a great choice. I think he would have been an excellent singles champion.
Yeah, the early version of Ken as a champion, definitely not. But I'll throw out sort of this question / comment. As a heel Ken Patera, is it the pre-Sheik version or the post-Sheik version?
Well, was there?
Good question.
If you're talking strictly AWA,
Yeah,
I think it's the Sheik version. And, no matter how you slice it, it's Blackwell and Patera and Duncombe and Adnan and Bobby Heenan. That's the mix that I would almost bet people are talking about.
if that is what the people voted for, then I agree with it. Once Ken got purchased by Adnan to become a part of the Sheik's army, that's the version that I would agree with. I think he would have made a great heel at that point. The Bobby Heenan stable version, when he's with Patera or with Duncombe and so forth, nah, I don't see it at that point. But definitely when he became the evil Iraqi sympathizer.
How much heat would he have generated as a world champion, as a member of Sheik's army?
Massive. I mean, massive. And Ken was the kind of a heel that didn't even need that rub. I mean, that would be Ken Patera oversized times 100 to give him that Iraqi sympathizer role. But yeah, I mean, over the top. Look what happened with Sarge. When Sarge was in New York, guys getting death threats and they had to drop the gimmick. Patera. Yeah. The thing is with Ken, he would not have held back either in his interviews. If he was told you're an Iraqi sympathizer, holy shit. Can you just imagine?
Well, and you need to go all the way. Like, if you're going to do it with something like that, you can't be timid. You have to be able to fully embrace it and not be afraid of the backlash. And Ken Patera just doesn't strike me as somebody that, as the kids would say, he's afraid of it. He'd run up the chimney looking for the smoke.
With all due respect to the human being Ken Patera, Ken was a natural heel in the business, period. I'll just leave it at that.
Yep. Okay, number 4, I believe.
Yes.
We're getting down there. And again, folks, these are your votes.
Did our votes get factored into the list?
Yeah, no, ours are separate.
Okay.
And here's a guy that we talked to before we went on the air, or talked about before we went on the air.
Ironically, that we're talking about Patera, and now we've got Jerry Blackwell. Followed kind of the same. I mean, it followed the same trajectory, right? I mean,
yes.
USA guy turns, becomes a member of the Sheik's army.
Remember, he was Farmer Blackwell when he first came in here. They wanted an Uncle Elmer type, and that farted immediately. No, this was not going to work. So almost immediately, Jerry was a heel. And it's interesting because typically you don't think of a guy Jerry's size as being a world champion. You picture him in the feuds. Maybe he wins a, international championship or something, but not as a world champion. But I'm telling you, this guy consistently was in the votes of the people. And I don't know if it was the babyface Jerry Blackwell in the later years that, got everybody excited, or the early 1980s Jerry Blackwell. Tremendous talent as a world champion, singles champion. Apparently, a lot of people think he would have been a good one.
incredible mic skills. Let's start there. He came across when he did his promos, even when he was a babyface. I mean, Jerry's promos were fantastic. The babyface version of Jerry, no, I wouldn't have wanted to see as a champion. But along the same lines as we talked about Ken Patera, the Sheik's Army version
Yes.
of Jerry Blackwell, without a doubt, I think Jerry would have made a fantastic champion, but not as a babyface.
Why not? Why not a babyface? Why didn't it work as a babyface for you, Joe?
To me, part of the chase of winning a world championship is the invincibility of a champion. And Jerry as a babyface champion, to me, it would have been a lot tougher to put in somebody as a babyface to win the strap from him. It just, his gimmick as a heel there just would have been too difficult for me to believe a Nick Bockwinkel could go into the ring and battle him. So who do you put in the ring to try to match up to him? But if you flip that, a heel Jerry Blackwell going against a Nick Bockwinkel, you're like going into the match thinking, shit, does Bockwinkel have a chance? Even though he's been champion for all these years and he's technically a better wrestler, it's sort of the same thing with Hogan. You know, the analogy that I'm trying to make. You want to see the challenger who on paper looks so much bigger, badder, and better, and then get fucked out of winning the championship. And then there is that chase that continues on. So that's my logic there.
Joe, I think too, the heel Jerry Blackwell was much better than the babyface Jerry Blackwell, although immediately when Jerry turned babyface, he was a red hot babyface. By the time we got into the late 1980s, where he's starting to wrestle guys like Stan Hansen or whatever else, as you talked about invincibility, somehow it just looked like Jerry was not the same, you know, out of control Jerry Blackwell. But again, out of the chute in 1984, when he first turned, he was electric. I mean, the fans were just nuts about this guy. Jerry had health issues too that I'm sure over the years were taking a toll on him, where he couldn't deliver what he had in the ring. One of our favorite performers, I think, all three of us.
Yeah, to your point there, Mick. When Jerry turned, and we've discussed it on here and said it many times, you know, the greatest heel or babyface turn in AWA history. Well, at least I'll say it again, in my opinion. When he turned, Jerry was so hot because of his feud with the Sheik's Army and subsequently Bruiser Brody, that he went toe to toe with Brody in those brawls. When that went away, Jerry stayed babyface, and it just didn't have the same zip. So I agree 100%.
So Jerry needed a hot heel to keep him over as a babyface.
I don't think they could. I shouldn't say they couldn't have brought somebody in or found somebody, but when you start with Brody, when you're comparing invincibility,
there's no place to go.
Exactly. Where do you go from there?
They tried it. They tried it with Stan Hansen. They tried putting Jerry in the ring with Hansen a couple of times, and it went over. But again, not nearly the impact that the Brody feud did. When he finally turned on Adnan, I think Adnan may be the catalyst for his whole incredible babyface run. When he finally, you know, stood up for America and kicked the shit out of the Iraqis. Yeah, that was a massively popular Jerry Blackwell. But again, combination of circumstances, you know, the fans' interest in the AWA itself was starting to wane.
Yep.
You know, not that long after that feud. Plus Jerry's health issues. Just took a toll on him all the way around.
I do have one question, just to kind of go back to something from a few minutes ago. When you were talking about a heel Jerry Blackwell and talking about, who, imagine him in there with a Nick Bockwinkel. Is there any way that you could have run a program with a babyface Nick Bockwinkel at that time against anybody who would have been a babyface, a heel champion?
They did it with Adnan, and that was about all that they did. Nick was still a heel champion at the time, but Adnan had come into the AWA in 1979-ish or whatever, 80, 81, and he was so red hot as a heel. And the fans had not seen a Sheik gimmick in the AWA before. So he and Nick had a series of matches. I think they went to the well once too often. They wrestled 4 times in the Twin Cities. The first time out, Nick was cheered. And part of the reason that he was cheered, not only because Adnan was a hated heel, but they did an angle where Bobby Heenan was hit over the head by Adnan's sword prior to the match as they're standing in the ring.
No Heenan.
They got Heenan away from the ring.
Okay.
So, now the fans
sense.
they're looking at Nick as the All-American guy going up against Adnan. But to my knowledge, that was really the only time that I can think of in the AWA where they had a major heel going against Nick while Nick was a heel.
Yeah, I think Adnan came in about 77 because he
Was he that early?
Well, think back to the Super Destroyer days. That would have been certainly before 1980.
I'm thinking Adnan came in about the time Tito Santana did, because that was the initial.
That was about 70. I want to say 78.
Okay.
I'm George Shire would know. I'm sure he'll message us. The authority. George, let us know when we can Google it too.
No, he's still looking at his Larry Hennig plaque.
Eric Cartman said, "Respect my authority." Okay,
let's keep moving. Where are we at?
What comes before 3?
Number 3, top 3 according to your votes, folks. Don't blame us or give us credit if you agree. What do you think about
all the credit, none of the blame? That's how we roll.
That's right. And look at here. It looks like Baron may have overdosed on sauerkraut or Wiener Schnitzel or something. He's not looking really good there. A little bit bloated, but nonetheless,
looks like he smelled something bad.
It's not looking good here. But the Clawmaster Baron von Raschke, as a babyface Baron von Raschke, no. And I don't know how many of the people who voted were voting strictly on the babyface Baron that we saw over the last several years of his career. For me, what I had seen him get into the business and then turn heel and then turn babyface, the heel Baron von Raschke, I think, would have been a great foreign menace. He was so loyal to the AWA in the 1970s. He would have made a good champion.
100% yes on the heel, 0 as the babyface. Because by the time Baron turned babyface, he was getting up there in his career. Jim wasn't exactly a gym rat. Fair to say that, Mick?
I think that's fair.
Yeah. But Baron's gimmick as a heel, phenomenal. I couldn't stand him and Horst Hoffman. And then he left and came back, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mick, but didn't he come back right away as a babyface?
I was thinking about that as you were talking, Joe. I don't remember if he came back right away as a babyface. I don't think so, because he had a feud with Pampero Firpo. And this would have been like...
That was early 70s for Firpo. Like 73, 74-ish.
73, 74, but he had... I think he had worked with Hoffman first as a tag team, and then Firpo, who was developing as a babyface, they got into the ring in a battle of the claw holds, And
but didn't that happen because Hoffman left, and then Baron stayed? They had to do something with the singles. That for the Pampero Firpo opponent version of Baron von Raschke, I believe, was before Jim left. Baron von Raschke left for a short time, and I was it a year, maybe 2 years, where he just sort of disappeared off of the map.
He went to Georgia. He worked at Georgia Championship Wrestling, but I'm thinking about it now, and I got to look this up because my time frame may be screwed up on this, but I thought that the Baron was working with Firpo about the same time that the Valiant brothers were here, which would have been mid-1970s, maybe 1975, 76. But I don't know. I got to look that one up. But bottom line, heel Baron, champion, babyface Baron, no way.
Yeah, but number 3 on the list, as long as it's the heel, the dastardly German version of Baron von Raschke.
Yep. All right. Who's the runner-up here, Chrissy boy?
Chrissy boy, I like that.
Let's take a look and see here. And again, knowing who this is, we have our opinions as to why he didn't get the championship. Because Vern Gagne felt that with his ego, Billy Robinson, if he was told to drop the championship at any point, would have fought it, maybe left the territory, maybe quit. I don't know. But Billy Robinson, from a technical standpoint, if he had a decent personality, if he was not such a hard guy to deal with, he would have been an excellent choice as world champion. And it's apparently a lot of people agree because, again, he's the number 2 vote getter. The question is, Vern puts out the movie where, Mike Bullard, Vern Gagne, is wrestling Billy Taylor, Billy Robinson in the original Wrestler. And it was pretty close to home because Vern was the aging champion and Billy Robinson was the very popular upcoming babyface who couldn't be beaten. And I don't know that Vern wanted to give the title to Robinson, not only because he might not get it back, but also from a popularity ego standpoint. I think Vern wanted to be the babyface in the territory.
Yeah. Well, we'll go through our list, but I'll just tease and say that I added Billy to my list. The fan of me at the time wanted Billy Robinson to win the championship. Finding out about what type of person he was years later, no. But I put him in my list from a fan's perspective. As a young, I was, 8, 9, 10 years old, even younger now that I think about it. The younger version of me wanted to see Billy Robinson win the championship. So
I would venture to say that a lot of our viewers, a lot of our listeners probably would feel the same way had they not heard us talk about it, talk about the real Billy Robinson behind the scenes. Because if you just take the Billy Robinson TV persona, this guy was magic. Nobody had ever seen anything like him in the AWA. And you're right, Joe. Everybody was gaga over Billy Robinson, not knowing, and maybe it wouldn't have made a difference back then, in the kayfabe era, what kind of a personality he had.
So I got a couple of things about Bill. Oh, go ahead, Joe. And then I got a couple of questions about that.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. My comment can wait.
I was thinking, number one, was there any sort of, because I want to talk about the babyface Billy Robinson, maybe being near the top of the card. Was there ever insecurity? Did you feel like, looking back what we know now, insecurity by Vern that he would lose his spot as the number 1 babyface if Billy was to get a run with the title?
I think,
because it sounds like Vern was very protective of his spot.
Vern knew too, because he had matches with Robinson around the horn, and especially in Chicago. And Vern was the subtle heel. He what you saw in the original movie, The Wrestler, was really playing out in the AWA rings. And people were getting behind Billy Robinson. At that point, they were getting a little bit tired of Verne. He had the championship for several years. So Robinson was getting, I don't want to say 90, maybe 60, 70% of the babyface pop from the crowd when they wrestled.
I'm going to sort of, go ahead, Chris.
Oh, I was just going to ask now, and my final comment about Billy Robinson, because this also leads into our next person. Are we now in an age where you look more at the character of a person more so than the character or the gimmick that they played on TV? And is it easier for people to separate the two? Or is it like, yeah, I like Billy Robinson, the wrestler, even though he might be a complete, douchebag behind the scenes? Are we in that era now where people's perceptions, they don't look at the wrestler in the same way because the person behind the scenes maybe is a little flawed?
I know exactly what you're saying, and I don't mean this to sound denigrating about wrestling fans. I don't think wrestling fans all the time give a shit what the guy is like outside the ring. And I think case in point is going to be a guy we're going to talk about here in a minute. I think there's a lot of people that still say Chris Benoit should be in the Hall of Fame. Wrestling fans, I don't think always make that distinction. And, maybe this is all sports. If you put people on a pedestal, you don't give a shit if the guy's doing steroids, if he's, Barry Bonds or whoever, he's still Barry Bonds. He's my guy. And I think wrestling fans sometimes are very short-sighted with that.
Loyal to their guys no matter what.
Absolutely. I don't think that much has changed. Society has changed. But I think wrestling fans have pretty much, in that sense, they're loyal to their guy.
And I think the internet has a lot to do with your question, actually, Chris. Back in the 70s and even into the 80s, you really didn't know about the actual person.
Yeah.
But then the internet comes along, and especially once it gets into the 2000s, all of a sudden, what kind of fucking toothpaste and brand of toilet paper that a wrestler uses. Now, does that impact their like or dislike for the gimmick? I agree with Mick. No, what they see on TV, that it's whether or not they like the gimmick or not.
What about you guys? Do you guys look at Billy Robinson different now?
Totally.
Okay.
Totally differently. And the next guy that we're going to have coming up. And again, I was a big Chris Benoit fan. I don't think he belongs in the Hall of Fame. He murdered his wife and kid. It's just the way I look at it. And so, I do make the separation, whether it's a wrestler or it's a movie star like Mel Gibson or whoever. If you're an asshole and I know about it, that's going to dull my impressions of you. I don't care how good you are at your craft. If at your core, you're really a piece of shit, then I don't have time for you.
I agree 100%. And when we get to sort of a no-brainer, I think, as to who's going to be number one on the list. But I've said it before about who is number one on our list. Yep. Think about what you want of Terry Bollea. The character Hulk Hogan is the number one draw in professional wrestling history. He, along with Vince McMahon, changed the business. There's several wrestlers that I could name that I don't care for them as a human being, and no, I'm not going to name them. But what they did in the ring, what they've done in the business, they deserve their kudos, plain and simple.
Hulk Hogan was far and away the top vote getter. And again, you said it so perfectly, Joe. People weren't voting on Terry Bollea.
No.
They were voting on Hulk Hogan and whether or not he should have had a run with the AWA title. I would say absolutely he should. He should have had a run with it. I would have given him a run with it a year earlier, a year before they did the Super Sunday. Maybe have Nick win the title back at Super Sunday instead of screwing people, because then, you've got a matter of months and Hogan is gone. I think it's a no-brainer to say that Hulk Hogan should have had at some point a run with the championship.
When we were talking about Hogan, when we did a show a couple weeks back, and we talked about him being the biggest draw in the history of the business, in terms of, because I know there were people that, brought up other names, including some from the Attitude Era with Stone Cold Steve Austin. When I look at Hogan and I say, in my opinion, he's the biggest draw in the history of the business, maybe the business itself was making more money in, the late 90s, and maybe it's making more money now than it ever has. But I just think for how Hulk Hogan changed the business and made one wrestler synonymous with the industry. That's what's so impressive about Hulk Hogan, is he was the one. If you mentioned professional wrestling,
right,
you had one name that came to mind. And the frustrating thing is the AWA had it, and they had it during the Rocky III era too. And I just feel like all of these opportunities were there for Vern. And looking back, it's just like misstep after misstep after misstep after misstep. If just one of those would have hit, it might not have changed the long-term trajectory, but so many missteps when it comes to Hulk Hogan. You don't get lightning in a bottle like that very often. And they had it, and he fumbled the bag, in my opinion.
It's interesting, Chris, that you say that, because there's another school of thought too that says, as far as the missteps are concerned, I think Vern made just two missteps with Hulk Hogan. One, I think, was the Japanese merchandise deal. That was really stupid on Vern's part, to be greedy and, you got to give me this percentage and what have you. And of course, the second one was that horrible finish to Super Sunday. As far as did he make a lot of missteps with Hulk, it goes to your point about the box office impact. Hulk Hogan was drawing 19,000 people to the St. Paul Civic Center consistently anyway. So Vern really, he probably looked at it and said, shit, we're filling the building, standing room only every month. We don't need to put the title on this guy. Super Sunday, they needed to put the title on Hulk Hogan. And I'm not saying that, the business would have changed and Hogan wouldn't have gone. Super Sunday was the day, if you were going to pull the trigger, that was it.
I will say this about Hogan being on top. I did not include him in my top 5. And by the way, for the record, Hulkamania started in the AWA. Let me reiterate that. The teenage version of me would have voted for Hulk Hogan as somebody I wanted to see grab the AWA championship. The later version of me, and I have to admit that the whole Terry Bollea part of it, knowing more about him, probably plays into my statement of I'm glad that he didn't win the championship. And it's not just this politics. I mean, it's just everything wrapped up. But I think the biggest reason is I'm still sort of not pissed off or upset, but a little bit jaded that he left the AWA and went to the WWF, and thereby really starting the demise of the AWA.
Mickey, you were talking about, Hogan drawing 19,000 fans without having the title. I'm going to liken it to something that's happening here in the Twin Cities. We talked about it earlier. We were talking about the Minnesota Twins situation and how the ownership group put the team up for sale, and they've alienated their fan base. And now to come back and say, well, we're not going to sell the team. And then they put out this vanilla statement. it's not having your finger on the pulse of the fan base. It's not feeling the temperature of the people that are supporting you. Did Vern not get the sense that this is what people wanted and he didn't? Or, because I mean, if he's drawing 19,000 people, wouldn't you think that eventually you'd get the feeling that the appetite is there to make that change?
Of course, he knew it all along. Yeah, I mean, it's no surprise to Vern. He goes in there and they're sold out before the doors open. He knew what he had in Hulk Hogan, but he also knew that in Vern's mind, he didn't need to pull the trigger. He's still filling this building. Why make the move? Why change history, whatever it might be?
But why not give the people what they want?
And that's where I would say Super Sunday was the demise. I think that he just played the same hand for as long as he could, and he should have, done something on Super Sunday, and he didn't. Whether or not it would have changed history, I don't know. One point that I was going to make, we're talking about the Terry Bollea character as opposed to the Hulk Hogan character. The me now, if I'm objective, I look back on this. Yeah, I don't like the Terry Bollea character, but that wasn't the question in this poll. The question was, would this guy have deserved a run as AWA champion? Hulk Hogan. And I guess even knowing what I know now about Terry Bollea, if I'm honest with myself, yeah, you got this character over here, Hulk Hogan, you got Terry Bollea, but Hulk Hogan was drawing huge money. Hulk Hogan made the AWA into something it had never been before. So would this guy have been a logical choice as champion? Yes. I guess even knowing what I know now from a business standpoint, it would have made sense.
From a fan interest standpoint, yeah, everybody wanted Hogan to get the strap. But if he would have gotten a strap, and I think we discussed this during the Hogan show, would it have as much of a I have to go to the next card feel with Hogan already having the championship? Would a Hulk Hogan and Dr. David Schultz run kept the fans' interest as much as Hogan chasing Nick Bockwinkel? I'm asking the question more than trying to make the statement.
Where do you go with Hogan once you give him the belt? Because he's already reached the mountaintop.
Yeah. Do you go back and continue a run against Nick Bockwinkel? Or do you go and have him do a Dr. D. David Schultz run? I don't think a Schultz Hogan run would have been as interesting as a Hogan Bockwinkel run.
Interesting points. And what I would say is that Hulk Hogan is an anomaly in the sense that I think even if he was at the top of the mountain, and he is absolutely singular in this, and I guess that's the magic legacy of Hulk Hogan. I think even if he was on top of the mountain, have Ken Patera attack him on television. You got the Dr. D feud, which was tremendous. Dr. D was a great talent. You had Jesse in the mix. You've still got Bockwinkel. You've still got Heenan. You've got tag team matches. So still they could have gotten some mileage out of this. So I got to look at it objectively. And in that sense, I think Hulk Hogan stands alone as somebody that even if he had won the championship, the magic wouldn't necessarily have worn off. One thing I would say, the responses I got in the poll, people are so divided on this guy. The people that support him, it's like when he passed away. You go to the internet and you got this group of people that say this was the greatest thing since sliced bread. I don't care. Hulk Hogan was my childhood. Hulk Hogan, Hulk Hogan. And then you got the other people that say this guy was an asshole. Terry Bollea was an asshole. Hulk Hogan was a character. And he's number one on the list by a country mile in votes. And I think the bottom line.
Now, if Hogan would have gone the Benoit route,
Oh,
totally different thing.
Yeah.
There is that fine line of the human being crossing over into the gimmick.
being racist is despicable, and holding talent down is not good. Lying about stuff is not good. Politically, you don't like Hogan's views. All that absolutely makes sense. But again, you got the separation. You got the character Hulk Hogan. This poll didn't say, hey, what do you think of Hulk Hogan as an individual? It asked, should this guy have gotten a run as the champion?
Yeah, Hulk Hogan was, you said it, Mick, Hulk Hogan was my childhood. Like, I grew up in the era of Hulk Hogan and Hulkamania in the WWF, where he was the all-American hero. And it was so influential to me that I can look at Hulk Hogan. I can be like, okay, Terry Bollea, the person, might have his warts. Hulk Hogan, the individual, Hulk Hogan, the character, the wrestler, is just an icon in the industry and in pop culture. And I think he should be treated that way. And you can separate the two, but to me, Hulk Hogan is absolutely, number one deserving of this list. Let's buzz through ours here quick, guys.
Go ahead, Chris.
I think that the talk about Hogan, I mean, it's been talked about several times, but I think it's always nice to add a little bit more context. I went with, I had 4 out of the 5 on that, including Superstar, Larry, Baron, which I agree, the healed Baron. I just think that, for whatever reason, maybe a foreign heel like that didn't work. The one guy that I had on my list that you guys didn't, you did, Joe.
Joe did.
He wasn't on the other list. Now, I know he's more synonymous with the NWA, but I had Harley Race. To me, Harley Race, wherever Harley goes, and I know he was part of a team with Larry Hennig, Harley Race is world champion material. He's believable. The reputation, to me, Harley could have been someone that I feel could have had a really nice run as a heel with the AWA title.
And I will start my list with Harley. I was too young to really remember the Hennig Race tag team. And Harley, I saw smatterings of him. He was at Super Clash. We've talked about that match, which was actually pretty good against Rick Martel. I have Harley on my list, admittedly, because of what I've learned of him and what he did in his career and the stories about him. So that's why I added Harley to the list. The other ones, I've got Wahoo, Billy Robinson, Superstar Billy Graham, and Larry the Axe Hennig. And I discussed my feelings on those other 4. But yeah, like you, Chris, Harley was the only one that did not crack the top list that I had in my top 5.
I think Harley was great, but as and maybe this is coming from the old timers view, Harley had that great run with Larry Hennig as a tag team champion. Then he basically, in the later years, 1970s, he left and he went to the NWA. So you've got a guy who's the champion for a certain length of time as a tag team champion. He's feuding with Crusher. He's, which is great. But then he leaves. He's already got his championship, but then he leaves, goes to the NWA, and the rest is history. And then when he came back in 1990, that's not the same Harley Race.
No, not even close.
But as far as an all-time great, there's no question about it. I loved Harley. The next thing that I have up here is me, and I've got Hogan. I've got Superstar Billy Graham on my list, but then I diverted a little bit. And if we could put a couple of those pictures up, this is the guy that I have maintained when he came into the AWA area in the early 1970s. He was just coming off beating Bruno Sammartino at Madison Square Garden. Ivan Koloff was here for a few years, and had Vern wanted to give up the championship, giving it to the foreign menace, Ivan Koloff, who now had a world reputation, beating Bruno Sammartino, I think it would have been ideal. Stan Kowalski was his manager, his mouthpiece. Stan could get anything over, and I think Ivan would have been. I think they missed the boat on not giving Ivan the championship. Got a couple others that were not on your lists. This guy right here, all-time great, and certainly Bockwinkel and Stevens and Patterson had the tag team championship. I think when Ray turned babyface and he had the feud with the Heenan family, even for a short time, it would have been nice to give Ray the championship again, even for a short time. He goes over Nick. He's completed what he wants to do with the Heenan family. Then he give it back to Nick at some point. But Ray, one of the all-time greats, had to put him on the list. I think he would have made a good champion, even in the short term. And one other guy that I would have absolutely given the championship to when he was red hot. If we can get him up, there he is. You prick. Sheik Adnan LKC was so hot when he came here, and he had all those initial feuds. And I'm not talking, by the time he went in, formed tag teams and won tag team championships. I think when he challenged Bockwinkel for the championship and they had that series of matches around the horn, I think it would have been very advantageous for the AWA early on in the feud to give Adnan a run with the championship. He had more heat than anybody, which is why he got booed and Nick Bockwinkel got cheered. I think, again, short term, you got that foreign menace. The United States hated the Iraqis. I think it would have been absolutely great to see Adnan with the championship. So that's my list, and I'm sticking to it, as is everybody else.
I got to say, the three that you mentioned that was different than our list, I got to agree with you. Adnan, of the three, Adnan was probably the least capable worker. We've talked about his taking back bumps, more of a crouch down and sort of falling back. But there's no denying the heat that Adnan had. I think a case could be made that Adnan was the top heel in AWA history.
No doubt.
Yeah, it just, he was that. When you have people cheering Nick Bockwinkel at that time, you knew that you had heat.
And the AWA is smart enough to get Bobby Heenan away from the ring so the fans weren't conflicted at all. And you just had this good-looking 6'1" Hollywood movie star Bockwinkel defending the honor of the United States against this desert rat, this despicable, anyway.
Yes.
Hey, I want to thank everybody for their votes. It was a nice response, short notice, got a couple of hundred people that participated. And thank you, folks.
All right, and for those couple hundred people that responded, feel free to sign up for the Pinfall memberships as well.
That's right.
$4.99 a month. I mean, you can't. It's the best value in wrestling podcasting.
You mentioned last time we did a podcast, you actually said it's only $5 a month. Well, I know for a fact that Jeremy Chura had a heart attack when he heard that ostensibly it had gone from $4.99 to $5. Jeremy was actually going to bail on us. So let's make sure that everybody knows it's $4.99.
$4.99 a month. You get our watch alongs. You get it back to ring. So you get, it honestly is fantastic value. And, subscribe to the podcast and the YouTube channel, rate, review, subscribe, comment, because it all helps us with the algorithm. But man, $4.99 a month. You can't beat it for wrestling value.
Yep.
All right, let's give some shout outs here, guys. I believe Mick, you are up first.
Sure, we'll go. A couple of kids named Otto and Landon. They are my grandsons.
Are they subscribed?
I'll even pop for that instead of putting away for their education. I'll pop for that.
They don't need an education.
Well, not
We don't need no education. Just
but Otto
subscribe
and
to
Landon,
the podcast.
if some point in when you get a little bit older, you can look at what your grandfather did, not even as a living, but this stuff right here. Shout out to my grandsons.
My blind dart throw of the week goes to Christopher Brooks.
Yeah, he's by the way, one of our most recent Pinfall members. And he's one of those guys that I have to get stuff out to. If you're a Pinfall member, you haven't gotten it, let me know at chris.sportcaster@gmail.com. Mine's going to be a shout out to Jeremy Peoples, who just watched our most recent watch along, the Bad Boys of the AWA, was actually referred to us from someone on the, I believe it was the Observer message board. And I didn't even know message boards were a thing anymore, but thank you. Whoever is putting us over on the Wrestling Observer message boards. And tell your friends, tell your family, come on over, enjoy it, because we have a good time. The 5 minutes in the front of the show, that nonsense notwithstanding. Next week, I don't know what we're going to do, because you're going to cauliflower. Well, as we record this, Mick is currently in Vegas, losing all of his money. So I don't know what we're going to do. We've got interviews that I know we want to get lined up. So I don't know what we're going to do in a couple weeks or next week, but we'll figure it out.
Well, if you're the boss, I mean, you're the guy here. But if this show that we're taping right now isn't going to air until next Tuesday, when I will still be in Vegas, well, then I come back on Thursday. Maybe we can do something the next day about a little Las Vegas cauliflower recap. What do you think? What do you think, boss? That'd be you, Chris.
Oh, I guess. Sure.